There are 21 side missions in Spider-Man 2, and I've just replayed them all so I can bring you this, the definitive ranking of every side mission. And, as you know, when someone says definitive on the internet, they mean purely subjective. This ranking is based on fun gameplay, satisfying narrative choices, and strange design decisions. So, which one's the best? I'll be running through all these in alphabetical order, starting off with the first mission in the Brooklyn Vision side stories, the Club Fair. This mission centers around Miles' experience at his high school, where he is supposed to meet a college recruiter, but goes off to rescue a kidnapped teacher instead. Despite how outlandish the setup is, I think this mission ties pretty well with Miles' overall struggle in the main story. He's in a state of arrested development when it comes to moving forward with his life, due to his responsibilities as Spider-Man, and experiencing Miles whispering answers to a college recruiter's annoying questions while stealthily taking down kidnappers was a decent amount of fun. The gameplay is nothing out of the ordinary, and the mission goes by really quick. Then everything wraps up very strangely. When Miles arrives back at the school with the teacher, his principal pretty much ignores the teacher, not even taking a moment to check to see if she's okay, and then makes a politician-esque speech as if she's the mayor of Halloween Town, proudly declaring Spider-Man the official hero of Brooklyn Visions. I get what they were going for here, but this is a really weird moment that felt extremely forced, as if the game felt it needed to justify why Miles would be helping out students around his school with the additional side missions that open up after this one. Unfortunately, any story developments about Miles' time in school ended the second he put on the Spider-Man suit, and I feel like the Brooklyn Visions missions overall were wasted potential. However, I appreciated the little we did see of Miles' high school life, and I think that this first mission was almost great. Next up, the Cultural Museum's series of side missions. Like many of the side missions, the first mission that kicked this off was technically part of the main campaign, so in all instances where that's the case, I will only be talking about the actual side missions themselves, which, for the Cultural Museum, is just 2 sub-missions. But enough beating around the bush. I really enjoyed this one. It's the spiritual successor to the Miles Morales game's side missions, which I think were the best part of that spin-off. I liked being able to interact with all the Harlem neighborhood characters again, getting a little taste of the community that was otherwise severely lacking in Miles' main story adventure. So right away, I was an easy mark. The first mission with tracking down the stolen saxophone was engaging enough, and confronting the nefarious Darren was a solid finale. Unlike some of the other missions, this one felt like it had some depth and thought behind it. While at times, this could feel very preachy with a tinge of cringe, like a trick played on gamers to teach them about Harlem jazz history, I still found that the museum exhibit at the end was pretty interesting, although I greatly appreciate that interacting with it was optional. This mission also has the best Miles and Rio moment when she teases him about teaming up more often and they dance together. While this mission was a little less than I wanted, I guess the best compliment I can give it is that it left me wanting more. While I think it would have been fun if this picked up where the Miles Morales series of side missions left off, and included some involvement from the Kingpin, I still think this works on its own. And for that reason, I'd say this one is definitely healing the world. Next up, the Emily May Foundation experiments. These are just the research stations from the first game, but somehow with even less engaging experiments. Everything is centered around either bees or plants, with the exception of one aerial drone mission and one bicycle mission, to get the most out of that innovative gameplay mechanic. That drone mission, where you deploy little hover guys after gaining enough altitude, was the most similar to the previous game's research stations, and I think it was by far the most fun to play. I don't think it was particularly good, but the others were just fairly boring. The holographic bee stuff was mind-numbing, and I don't like the gene splicing minigame. Ultimately, these experiments feel like they exist to justify the drawn-out sequence at the EMF headquarters in the main campaign, and to solidify what exactly the Foundation does, since while its name is very present in the main narrative, nothing about the work of the Foundation is ever relevant. However, I do really enjoy Harry's message to Peter at the end, and the idea of splicing his mom's tree with Aunt May's blossom was extremely heartwarming, with the bittersweet Spider-Man punch of Peter seeing his comatose pal once again. That alone bumps this mission's ranking up a bit, but it's still just whatever. The first friendly neighborhood Spider-Man app request on this list, Find Grandpa, hits some emotional beats that really resonated with me. The mission is extremely simple. Track down an old man for his granddaughter, then listen to him talk about his late wife on a bench by the water. There's no forced sequence where Spider-Man comes across goons in the park he needs to punch, no twist with the grandpa being involved in any crime. The friendly neighborhood missions did a great job of making Spider-Man feel like an everyman hero, and this mission embodies that more than most. Also, Peter asking Grandpa for more information about how he proposed to his wife was just a great character beat. Even though there's no gameplay here, I think the characterization of Spider-Man and the simple human moment make this a rock-solid mission. On the flip side, Graffiti Trouble is another friendly neighborhood mission, and I think it really mishandles everything it was trying to do. I like that we get to play as Haley. Since the series insists on having MJ be playable, I think it's nice that we get to spend some time as Miles' love interest. That being said, I didn't think this mission was entertaining or fun at all. The spray paint minigame and little lift puzzle didn't do anything for me. If the game was gonna go this route of putting you in the shoes of an artist, I would have preferred that the art mechanics be a bit more in-depth than move cursor to circle. Honestly, even if it was some kind of color in the lines type mechanic, I would have enjoyed that far more than what we got here. Also, I think that playing from the perspective of a deaf person was a really interesting idea. The way the mission is set up, with Miles going to the flower shop and hearing the music playing, then it cutting to Haley's perspective with the complete lack of sound in the same situation, was a great start, but the mission didn't really do anything with the idea, and instead opted to just incorporate emojis into Haley's view of the world. Personally, I think that was plain old lazy and disrespectful. It makes Haley seem childish and the player feel talked down to. If you're so insecure in your ability to communicate that Haley is nervous without using dialogue that you feel the need to put an emoji on her head, don't even bother. I think a video game is a perfect medium to communicate a sliver of what a deaf experience could be like, and it felt like this game really wanted the credit for delivering that experience without putting in the work to earn that credit. This mission had a chance to give us some one-on-one time to get to know Haley, but what we got were some shallow mini-games and a depiction of her perspective that was just plain weird. From the worst friendly neighborhood mission to the worst Brooklyn Visions mission, Homecoming Date was tedious, boring, and borderline obnoxious. Spider-Man is summoned to aid one kid in asking another out to homecoming, which could have been interesting if the scale of what the player needed to do was worthy of Spider-Man's involvement. Like maybe you have to race deep into Manhattan on a timer to grab something and deliver it back to the main boy before his date arrives. Instead, the game reincorporates its beloved electric tether mechanic, then holds the player hostage as we creepily watch one boy, who's in the habit of declaring out loud when he's getting a text from someone, stumble into a romantic trap. The dialogue is poorly written, the situation is mundane, and the gameplay is monotonous. It's like this mission was a first draft that no one had time to refine. I don't know how it got into the finished game, and frankly, it's weird. Now, it's time for Howard. You know this one. Another friendly neighborhood mission, Howard sees the return of everyone's favorite Pigeon Man. I think this was a clever way to reincorporate a side mission character from the first game, while removing the original collectathon aspect he was a part of, since this game already has so many. Much like Find Grandpa, Howard brings a level of humanity into the game in a way I deeply respect. At its core, this mission is very simple, just escorting some pigeons from Manhattan to Astoria. But the atmosphere and pathos that the game is able to build within a 5-minute span is so impressive. The first time I played it, I just took everything at face value and saw the mission as a chance to challenge my web wing skills. Soaring across the water with a flock of pigeons at sunset was surprisingly glorious, especially when the regalia of sailboats joins the fun. But, of course, Howard passes away at the end, and replaying this mission just makes everything all the more powerful. Very sad, very fun. The music gave me chills on the replay. This mission is definitely one that is healing the world. Next up, we come to our first combat-heavy side mission, the Hunter Blinds / Bases. These are pretty straightforward. Beat everyone up, collect information that leads you to a place to beat even more people up. The aesthetic of rushing into these invisible hideouts on the tops of skyscrapers is pretty cool, but it does lose its novelty after the first handful. I appreciate that you can go about these hideouts stealthily, but in my experience, there's no benefit to it. If stealth meant the second wave of goons didn't come running out, I may have gone stealth mode more often, but that wave incentivizes just bum rushing in. While the different blinds don't stand out to me, the bases are another story, so now you're getting a ranking within a ranking. Rank number 4, Harlem Base. This was the abandoned school, aka the motor pool. It was fine, kind of a boring layout with just a couple of buildings and one open-ish area in the center. Rank number 3, Financial District Base. This is the underground one, the old sewer chamber. It was an okay location, at least it was unique compared to the blinds. Rank number 2, Downtown Brooklyn Base. The abandoned military hangar, aka the Avery. It's definitely more of a stealth-focused base compared to the others, actually incentivizing stealth, which is so rare for this game. If you don't sabotage the birds first, a lot fly out to attack you. This was a fun one, and probably the most unique of the bunch. Rank number 1, Upper West Side Base. The abandoned hotel, aka the Arsenal. There are just a million dudes out in the open. You can actually fight a whole army of thugs down several levels of this decrepit place, like a challenge tower in a fighting game. I really like this setting, and I definitely had the most fun clearing out this base. Overall, I think the best part about the blinds / bases was the Kraven relationship stuff with his family. It provides more context for a primary villain, hints at a larger world, and potentially sets up minor plot threads for the future. The simplicity and repetition of the side mission keeps it from topping the rankings. It's not great, but it was almost. Another Brooklyn Visions mission, Lights Camera Action, was boring as hell. Just go around and take pictures of the school for a kid whose drone broke. If you just can't get enough of using the camera feature in this game, I guess this mission is for you. But for me, this was just whatever. The Sandman kicked the main story off with a massive bang. Just the scale of the conflict was the perfect way to start everything off, so I appreciate that we got to see more of Sandman throughout the game thanks to the Marko's Memories mission. I really like this one. The Sandman enemies are fairly simple, and the fights can get repetitive, but there's also fun opportunities to experiment with this unique enemy type. They can get crystallized by electricity and blown to dust if they're pulled into fans. In a game where copious amounts of street-level thugs nearly drown the player at times, I got a kick out of engaging with enemy types with the slightest of differences. Each of the crystals unlocks a snippet of Sandman's memory, providing context for his boss fight at the beginning and Kraven's hunt prior to his involvement with the Spider-Man. That makes Sandman much more sympathetic, and Kraven that much more cruel, and I think this narrative informs a level of maturity to Insomniac's world that I appreciate. Throughout the entire series, we've come to feel how lived in this world is, but seeing Sandman retired on a path to redemption was wonderful. There's a larger theme throughout this game about second chances, and I think Sandman being dragged back into a world of crime by Kraven only adds to it. Peter learning about his daughter Kimia and his attempt to reconcile with her on Sandman's behalf is very heartwarming and classic Spider-Man. I love this mission. Despite its simplicity, I think all the elements come together to make it rock solid. Another friendly neighborhood request, Monster in Queens, starts off with a complaint from an elderly blind woman and spirals into a bit of madness. I can see some people not caring for this side mission. The content is pretty outlandish, but something about it clicked for me. Spider-Man finds one of Kraven's robot dogs that has been wounded, and Genki hacks into it to make it such a good boy. The dog leads Spider-Man back to his abusive former master, who gets the ass-kicking he deserves, and the mission ends with the old lady, allergic to pets, now having a beast of a seeing eye dog. Stupid? Absolutely. Fun? I think so. Not every mission needs to be a home run, Some can be almost great and still be a good time. Mysterio side missions were the ones I was most hyped for when the game was being marketed. A lot was being kept under wraps, but once I saw the map with the Mysterio icon on it, I got excited. I loved his missions in the original Spider-Man 2 game, and I loved his portrayal in the MCU Spider-Man 2. So, I was hyped to see him in Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, and I wasn't disappointed. Sure, I don't love the skull design of Mysterio, and Quentin Beck's characterization feels a little off, but I really enjoyed all of this. I love having at least one replayable side mission where you can test your skills. I think the challenges were challenging enough, with a good variety to them, and I don't think they ever felt tedious. The aesthetic of the goons and settings were very fun, especially for the final mission inside that snow globe. This is also the only side mission that has a genuine boss fight to wrap it all up, and that's big bonus points for me. The story driving Miles to visit these different Mysteriums was solid enough, but built up to something slightly amazing. You get a little story if you want to listen to the dev tapes, revealing that Mysterio's villainy was actually the ultimate illusion, which was a fun twist. Like the Sandman missions, I appreciated the maturity of this world, where Mysterio can be a reformed villain, and Mysterio's innocence adds to the larger theme of redemption. This mission is definitely healing the world. Yet another friendly neighborhood request. Photo help is the most unique of the bunch, and dude, I just love this one. It's framed around helping an up-and-coming photographer, but that just sets up the flashback to a young Peter Parker meeting Jameson for the first time to sell him his first picture of Spider-Man. This mission has so much to love. Even though most of the gameplay is just the highly innovative bicycle riding, there is a quick park beatdown thrown in for good measure, which actually informs young Peter's little character arc. Peter learning how to be a New Yorker from Jameson to assert himself and not let anything deter him was perfect. Despite what a blowhard and clown Jameson is, it's fun to see how his influence actually had a positive impact on Peter and Spider-Man. I would have loved more flashbacks to young Peter in this game. Every time we saw him, I think the game nailed it. Even though this mission doesn't have too much meat on the bones when it comes to gameplay, I have to say that it's rock solid. The photo ops mission is just the landmark mission from the first game, where you take a picture of a designated spot, with one new addition that did improve things. Robbie Robertson. Peter and Miles submit these photos to Robbie, and in response, he calls them up and pretty much just reads aloud one of his thought-provoking tweets that's vaguely related. I love that Robbie was included in this game. I'm kind of bummed we didn't get to see a cameo of him in the photo help mission, but I feel like everything he had to say about the photos was extremely forgettable and unnecessary. However, after the final picture is submitted, the conversation with Peter where Robbie praises Spider-Man is by far the best part of this mission and Robbie's inclusion. I don't even know why Miles was able to participate in this mission. Robbie's words to him just don't hit nearly as hard. So yeah, ultimately, there's really nothing to this one. It's just whatever. Prowler Stashes. Once again, we have a rehash of a previous game's side mission with a fresh coat of paint. These stashes are just the sound sampling missions from Miles Morales, except swapping one annoying mechanic for a less annoying one. The narrative and structure of the missions are exactly the same. Show up someplace Uncle Aaron's set to go, do something for him that involves his mysterious past, then get a snippet from Uncle Aaron about that past, which occasionally mentions Miles' dad. Repeat. I do prefer these missions over the old ones, and I think the minigame design is fun enough for how simple it is, although I will say that Uncle Aaron's anecdotes were more interesting in the previous game. But then, there's the finale. A little bonus mission to wrap things up, and I hate it. Miles thinks that Uncle Aaron is going to pull a heist on his mom's Harlem apartment. I don't know how he got so stupid so quickly, but his reaction is so off-putting and out of character that it tarnishes the overall journey for me. Like, he shows up to his apartment, finds his dad's record player missing, hears it being played upstairs, goes up to find Uncle Aaron, who is listening to it in an empty apartment, and then gets in his face, accusing him of lying to him and still being the Prowler. Like, dude, You think this is some Prowler level behavior? For a character who's so chill and forgiving the entire game, especially after his arc with Martin Lee, to treat his uncle like this on the flimsiest of information was absurd. I usually like Miles and Aaron's relationship. There was definitely potential here, but it ended up being a big fat whatever. The next couple of missions I don't have too much to say about, so let's fly right through them. The last friendly neighborhood mission, Rooftop Fireworks, sees two brothers who blow themselves up with shoddily made fireworks. Spidey takes one brother to the hospital, then takes down the fireworks operation. I don't know what it is about this one, but it rubs me the wrong way. I don't really enjoy anything about it, and I think it's weird. On to the last of the Brooklyn Visions missions. Senior Prank solidified that if I went to high school at Brooklyn Visions, I'd hate everyone. They get all worked up about their lion mascot being stolen, and all any character does throughout is brag about how much better their school is than the other. Everyone who goes to Brooklyn Visions is a try-hard preppy dweeb-ass dork, and this solidified it. The mirror traps were at least unique, so that squeaks it to the top of a terrible series of missions. After the first one, it was all downhill. So, whatever. I guess every superhero game needs a collectathon, and Spider-Bots filled that role. I think they're fine, the theme was fun enough, and I appreciated the Across the Spider-Verse connection at the end, since that movie is just so fucking good, but the actual finale reveal fell flat because I have no idea who Delilah even is, so I don't care. I wish it was Miguel's hologram babe instead. Overall, this was just whatever. The Symbiote Nests are the last side mission introduced in the game, and I think they're fun beat-em-ups featuring the most annoying enemy type. Honestly, their presence, twisting towers looming across the skyline, was more impactful and cooler to me than the actual combat activities themselves. The best thing I can say about these is that they can definitely be a challenge, especially trying to do them when they first pop up as pre-Anti-Venom Peter. Nothing wrong with them, they're rock solid. Now. We arrive at the mission that everyone's talking about, the Flame. This is clearly the side mission that Insomniac put the most care and effort into. You can feel it in every nook and cranny. Here, we see the return of Yuri Watanabe, now serving as the horribly designed vigilante named Wraith. Aside from how annoying and poorly written I find anti-hero Yuri, I still enjoyed this mission. Mostly in spite of her. There are 4 submissions in all, which has Spider-Man tracking down a cult who worships the Flame and believes in his prophecy about the end of the world. It's all very cliche cult stuff, but what makes this so fun is the leader himself. This is an extremely unique take on a pre-Carnage Cletus Cassidy, and I loved every second he was on screen. Definitely gave off a Far Cry villain vibe that I very much appreciated. His dialogue and implied history with Yuri gave him a sense of depth, but his cunning and taunting of Spider-Man elevated him from your basic street-level gang leader to something far more interesting. I don't think that any of the submissions were particular standouts. Even the Yuri boss fight was kind of bland. Most of the fun came just from beating her ass. But I still feel like this is the structure I want Insomniac to follow for side missions in future games. Please do more like this. Having Spider-Man team up with a supporting character who has no involvement in the main plot, working to take down a villain who is actually a threat, is perfect. This can be replicated with heroes like Daredevil, Luke Cage, even Johnny Storm, and they would get immediate praise from me. Of course, this mission sets up Carnage for the future, and whether that's in DLC or another game, I'm absolutely here for it. I want to see more of Cletus Cassidy, I want to see Insomniac's take on Carnage, and how this Spider-Man deals with that threat. This mission is definitely healing the world. Finally, we come to the last side mission, Unidentified Targets. This is a fairly simple one with a fun twist at the end, and I really enjoyed the gameplay here. It's unique since it's the only side mission that really challenges your momentum and traversal skills. I think chasing down these robot birds in their slipstreams was a fun time, And I wish more side missions embraced the traversal side of things, since that has always been the strong suit of these games. The different chases lack variety, but I think the gameplay is solid enough that it's not a huge deal. Plus, the mystery and the reveal at the end are just too juicy. I did not see the chameleon's involvement coming at all. Walking into his freaky lair with all the paintings' faces smudged was so eerie and cool. This is another side mission that set up a storyline with serious potential for the future, and I'm very down to see how Insomniac can further incorporate Chameleon into their world. This one was rock solid. I'm sure I'll be changing my mind on these missions as I continue to replay the game, but this is my list as of now. What do you think? Which is your favorite? Please let me know your ranking in the comments, and take care.